Hey guys, it's Kevin with my review for my good friend Adam Haskell's new film, I'll Hold You Close. And of course, with this film, since it was released so unceremoniously, I'm going to try to be very careful with the plot, but without really saying too much about it. Essentially, this film, it focuses on this character named AJ. He is very suicidal, kind of at the end of his life, and basically, he goes to this campground where, like I said, he does plan on committing suicide, and very quickly he does become abducted by this character named Aaron, and Aaron basically starts to get him to rethink a lot of things, and a lot of bizarre shit goes down, and that's really all I'm going to say. So, I'll hold you close. Obviously, I had no expectations for this. You know, this was a film that Adam wanted to release in secrecy. He told me this before. He really loved what Cloverfield Paradox did, and he kind of wanted to try to replicate that. And similar to Cloverfield Paradox, this is coming off the heels of something really great. Number 2, Part 2 is genuinely almost one of my favorites of the year. I think it's a fantastic film. I think it's everything that a final film in a franchise should be. So, yeah, I mean, the precedent for this film was set pretty high. I really was looking forward to seeing what Adam was going to do next, especially because this is the first film in a while that isn't from a franchise. This is a completely new idea. There are all kinds of new characters and things like that, so I was very interested in seeing what he can explore here. And while I think the film does have a lot of interesting things about it, I'm sorry to say this is the first film that Adam has made, in terms of the ones that I've reviewed, that is not land for me. I was not the biggest fan of I'll Hold You Close. There are a lot of things I do like about this film, but we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. And for both of the films I reviewed, Batman Cookie 4, Another Day of Sun, and Number 2, Part 2, both of them, the acting has been a positive. I think the acting has been really great. Not the case with this film, honestly. For some, at least. Again, there's only 2 actors in this film. And something cool that Adam did do is that the main character is not Adam. It is, in fact, Dustin this time around. And here's the thing. I was really looking forward to seeing what Dustin would do here. I loved his work in both the previous films. And maybe it's just because he was playing such a menacing character, but to be honest, I really did not think he was all that great here. He seemed very sort of, he just didn't really seem that into the role. He seemed kind of confused as to what character he was really playing. The AJ character overall, we'll get to a little bit later, but Nichols' work here does not really elevate the character all that much. I really found him to be fairly bland and kind of just going through the motions. A lot of the movie, it didn't really seem like he knew what to do, and this particularly shocked me. Like I said, as someone who thought Nichols was just so incredible and had this great range in the past 2 films, the fact that here he seemed like he kind of was creatively stagnant, I was just very surprised. I thought for sure he would try to add something to this film, but honestly, he really did not seem all that into it, and I think that is easily one of the biggest problems of this film for sure. Definitely one of the most disappointing performances I've seen in a very long time, honestly. However, the other performance in this film, of course, Adam's, is fantastic. I loved Adam's work in this film. I thought he did an incredible job as the character of Aaron. The second you meet this character, you're so creeped out by him. He's very foreboding and just very, very intrusive in that way. Like, he's just almost always up, you know, he's always up in AJ's business. He rarely ever is giving him that personal space, and there's just something deeply unsettling about this character, and I think Adam just did such a great job with getting into that, and I really did love his work in the film, and I think definitely he is one of the best parts of this film for sure. I really did love his acting as this character, and for me, at least from what I've seen, I think Adam definitely has a much more varied range of characters than someone like Dustin, who, at least from what I've seen, can only really play one type of character and everything else just isn't as into. I think Adam just has a much wider range, and I think this film very much does prove that. So now, of course, we get to the directing and the writing, which, again, this really pains me to say, but the directing here, I don't think worked as well. Look, some of the directing is really good. Like, anytime this movie tries to be really creepy and you know, just very sort of, like I said, it just gives you that unsettling fear. it does a very good job with that. I was very creeped out by this film. It's one of those films where you're watching something and you feel like you really shouldn't be watching it, and it just gives you this deep sensation, a sensation that just kind of makes you want to you're just kind of clenching with fear at points, and you don't really know what's going to happen. And the way that Adam did set up that tension throughout the film, I think he did do a very good job with that, and that tension is very much permeated throughout the entire film, and I really did love what he did there. I think that the horror aspects of this film are very well done, but also the sort of, experimental aspects, because this is a very experimental film. There's a lot of things here that Adam is trying, and you can tell, definitely, that this is kind of stuff that he is a bit unexplored territory, but I did really like that he went there, and I thought there were some really cool things he did, particularly in the third act of this movie with the directing, that I really did enjoy overall. The part of the movie that didn't work for me is when the movie does try to be fun, because just like the other two films, this one isn't nearly as fun as those two were. Like, sure, Batman Cookie 4 is very much a thriller, but it did have a lot of fun moments to it, and not really the case with this film. This film is pretty serious throughout the whole thing, and anytime it tries to be funny, it honestly came across as very awkward to me. I watched this with a bunch of friends on Rabbits, and if Adam hadn't have told us that those scenes were supposed to be funny, I don't think it really would have come across that way to me. They did not really work. I get what he was going for, but for this film overall, I don't really think the levity was needed. I think this is one of those films where it could have honestly just been very creepy throughout it. It could have just been very, like I said, just very hard to watch at points throughout, and I just wish he would have stuck with that. I get it that obviously the comedy is something that he's very familiar with, but I just don't really think it worked here. For me, at least. Maybe for some, that might be different, but for me, I don't really think it worked out. In terms of the writing, that's where we get to my biggest issue with this film. I'm not gonna lie, the writing in this film, I think overall, is very underwritten. There are some cool ideas, for sure. But overall, in terms of the great character work we had in the other two films, this film just does not compare, to be honest. I don't think that this one really does hold up as well as the other two. And again, maybe it's just because the character work was so great in the past two films that's why the issues are a lot more blatant here. But for me, I really felt a lot of the writing was just a little bit underwritten, particularly in terms of our main character, AJ, who I know barely anything about. All we really know about this character is that, like I said, he's deeply suicidal. He seems to always be in fear. He's always on the edge of a nervous breakdown. He lives in an apartment complex or whatever. He's an adult, and he had some sort of fallout with his parents, and that's never communicated to us. We never get to see really what he actually went through, and I think if we would have dived a little bit deeper into that, then I think it could have really elevated this film overall. And that really is the biggest problem with this film, is that I just did not really care about our lead character, and unfortunately Dustin's performance does not really heighten the character at all, because like I said, he just didn't really do anything with it, and I felt that the character was just not very well written. I really could not get into this character at all, and it sucks because I think Adam's character, Aaron, is actually quite well written. Now, again, he's not the most full-fledged character, but in terms of this character, I think it actually works because this character is such a blank slate, and because we don't know a lot about him, I think it makes him that much creepier. All we really know about him is that he seems to have this fixation on childhood things. There's a lot of things in the film, like very early on, he brings up playing board games and things like that, and going back to wanting to play with dolls and all kinds of stuffed animals. So he very much has this childlike innocence about him, but because he has that innocence, that's what makes him so weird and always kind of off. And I really did like getting into the mindset of who Aaron really was. And the third act of this film really does get you very deep into that character, much deeper than you really want to. And like I said, I think Adam did a very good job with making it so creepy to the point where you just don't want to watch it anymore. And I really did think that the writing was very strong for that character, but I feel like this character, he had a lot of great ideas for, that the other character just wasn't as well written. And again, I could be wrong there, but to me, It felt like he had this really great idea of this Aaron character, but the lead character just did not really seem to have much of anything, and I was quite disappointed by that overall. So the writing really was not the strongest to me, I have to say. I think the writing was just a little bit confusing. There's a lot of things that I don't really understand, and again, that's one of the things I really appreciate about this movie a lot. I love that, you know, Adam is going for this film that is so experimental and so different, and has all these really interesting ideas and has a lot of things that aren't really explained. And, you know, I love films like that. David Lynch is one of my favorite auteur directors out there, or directors in general, mainly because he just goes for it. And I think Adam really did go for it, but in terms of the writing, just not really there for me. Cinematography-wise, though, this is easily, I think, the biggest standout in the film is the cinematography, because there's a lot of really cool things here. For example, throughout the film, a lot of the time, this film is supposed to represent having a panic attack, and that really doesn't just translate in terms of the film's tone. It translates in the cinematography too, because even the bars on the screen, you know, where like the black bars are, that even starts to shake a little bit, and that even starts to move. And the way that was done, I thought was actually really cool. At first, it was a little bit jarring, but once I got into it, I thought it was actually a really cool idea, and I really did like what Adam was doing with that. And I thought that the just, you know, like I said, the tilting of the screen, it adds a lot. Like, it's a very seamless thing, but it's really cool the way he does it. There's a lot of really cool color palettes and things like that. I will say some of the handheld camera moments did not really work as well here, but from what Adam has told me, it's not necessarily his fault that it really turned out that way. So I thought the cinematography was actually a pretty big standout here. I thought that was definitely one of the best parts of the film for sure, especially, like I said, when it comes to that third act. That third act is so deeply unsettling, and I really, you know, I recommend watching the film just for that third act. The score here as well, I thought was very well done. There's just something very, like I said, eerie about it, and I think that was really good. And the editing. The editing to this film, I'm not going to lie, I thought was really choppy. I did not really think that the pacing was all that great. Well, I should reiterate, the last 20 minutes are fantastic. I loved everything about the last 20 minutes. It's super out there. It's so weird, to the point where I didn't really know what was going on. And I don't really care. Like, I like the fact that it was really out there. But the rest of the film just did not really give me that vibe. The rest of the film felt a little too, like I said, underwritten. It didn't really feel, it felt like the journey there, you know, like I said, the exit was much stronger than the journey. And I think that really is the biggest problem with this film, is that there is a lot of really cool things in here, but just overall, a lot of things at the end of the day just don't really add up to me. I didn't really care about the AJ character. Dustin, you know, Nichols' performance I thought was incredibly bland. Adam definitely went for it, and there are a lot of things that I really do appreciate, and that's one of the reasons why I think I'm a little bit more forgiving to this film, because again, it does go into some really weird stuff. It isn't afraid to, you know, do some really weird things. It's not really pulling any punches, and I really respect filmmakers that do that, that make something because why the hell not? And they don't really care what, you know, the general public thinks of it. They're making it because that's what they want to do, and I really do love that a lot. But at the end of the day, can I really say that I enjoyed I'll Hold You Close overall? I really can't. There's just simply too many things in this movie that just did not really work for me. There are a few moments of comedy I thought felt incredibly flat. The story is really not all that engaging. It's really not till those last 20 minutes that I really was fully invested in the film. Anytime I was getting invested, we cut back to that AJ character, and I just really did not care about him overall. So again, it really does pain me to say this, but this is the first film that Adam has done that I really was not the biggest fan of. I do think that this film does have a fan base. I do think that this is a film that if some people were to watch it, they might really enjoy it. But just personally for me, this one was not nearly as strong as the last two films that Adam did put out. And I am going to give I'll Hold You Close overall a C. Again, I hate saying that, not just because Adam's my friend, but I truly do think he's a very talented guy. I know there was a lot of cool things he did in this film, but just overall, it did not come together for me. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. I do still recommend you check out the film because Adam is a very understated director, and nobody has really seen anything that he's done. So I do recommend you check it out simply just for, you know, his genius directing overall. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.